3, 2, 1, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. This is an episode of Culture War Happenings. It's not really like a series. We're just calling it that. This week in the Culture War, whatever you want to call it. I'm here with, I'm here with a couple people that were also at Mythcon this year. I'm here with Aydin Paladin, who you guys know. She's been on multiple times. Hi, Aydin. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you. And I'm here with, I'm sorry, Lauren Brooks. It slipped my mind for a second. Lauren, I've known for a while now, though, but I've never met her in person. So this is the first time we've ever met. So, hey, Lauren, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So it was great meeting you at Mythcon. It was also great meeting Aydin. It was the first time I ever met her. And it was just a one-day event. So maybe we should explain what Mythcon is. And don't worry, guys. This is going to become about the Kavanaugh hearings because there is a relationship, actually. There is a relationship. So Mythcon 5 was the fifth of a series of yearly conventions, I guess, or conferences that mainly discussed secularism, right? Who here has been to a Mythcon before? Have either of you guys?
No, this was my first.
It also popped my cherry, so.
So, see, yeah, so it was also my first, even though it's been in Milwaukee. I think it's always been Milwaukee for like the past 5 years. But in the past, they were like mainly atheist conferences. And this was the first time that it was not actually explicitly an atheist conference or a conference about atheism and secularism. But in fact, it was a conference about, I guess you could say, I don't know, what would be the best way to describe it? I mean, there was a little bit of atheism in there, but it was mostly like about discussions of social justice and human rights stuff. Is that fair?
I think just general social issues might be the best way to describe what it was, because it did extend beyond just social justice. There were a number of different topics that were raised to greater or lesser degree, depending on, you know, we went to all of the panels. Brian, I know that you were always the fastest up there to get on there and ask some questions. So
yeah.
You went to almost all of them. And were better at that than I was. I was not good at getting my questions answered because I'm too slow.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it covered everything. I think just general societal social issues might be the best way rather than social justice.
Yeah, or at least a discussion on it was discussion around the social issues in a kind of meta way. Also, Karen just showed up. She is here as well.
Next time you schedule something, you might want to tell me what time zone we're working with here.
I said 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm pretty sure that's how it said it in the Skype. Eastern. And then I moved it up a half hour because Alison asked me to move it up a half hour just to make sure that Lauren was going to be able to get into the Discord. It's Eastern time. That's okay, though. Right. That's okay. I'll take it. But you're here, so thanks for showing up.
Yeah, I was busy having sex with my husband. So.
Oh, so you guys...
Oh, hey, I know what that's like.
Okay.
Now I do. Holy shit.
I know. I don't.
Well, you know, he's been gone all week, so...
Oh.
Yeah, no, I was gone last weekend, and he was gone all last week and all this week, so it's been a while.
Okay, so I guess a couple of you guys are post-coital mode, and maybe that'll change the discussion. So we'll see if that make
it potentially more positive.
Well, I'm in one of those moods right now, but I'm trying to keep my one dog from eating my other dog's head. So,
so Michael Keller is criticizing the volumes of the people talking. I raised Lauren's volume. I'll lower my own a little bit. I think Karen sounds fine.
Okay.
I'm not gonna sweat it.
Yeah, if I'm too low, I'll pop on my headphones. But all right, let's go.
No, I raised you up. I raised you up. So you should be okay. Here, I raised you up a little bit more. All right. So anyway, so Karen, what do you think about Mythcon? Did you have fun? Have any thoughts on it?
It was fun. It was definitely fun. It was the first time I actually got to drink on stage, pull a hitch. The only hitch to it was that I couldn't smoke.
Oh.
On stage, so
This is how Karen gauges whether or not an event was good.
Well,
was I able to smoke and drink?
Can I smoke and drink?
A hell of a lot outside and drank outside.
Yeah, you more than made up for it, Karen.
The outdoor drinking on the public sidewalk made up for a lot of stuff. Yeah,
we had a good time out there. I said hi to you like twice, but it's like you were smoking and I was also smoking.
Yeah, no, well, and it's like like I said hi to Shu once and Greg once, and then it was just like, and then we just kind of got pulled into our own little crowds of
people draw you in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they do. I managed to have breakfast with Carl Benjamin. That was nice.
Cool.
He blamed me for himself. So that was nice. He was like, "You're responsible for me. It's all your fault." And
Karen's responsible for everybody. Just about.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, like it was fun. It was nice. I think I met Chrisiosity, but she didn't introduce. She didn't introduce herself. So I'll have to actually watch the panel to see if that person was indeed Chrisiosity. But I actually went up to her because she's sitting on the couch next to my computer bag in the green room, and I accused her of snooping through my things. And I'm like, "Why are you sitting so close to my bag? Are you snooping through my things? What the hell are you doing? What gives you the right to look through my personal belongings? Like, I have all kinds of really embarrassing things in that bag, right?" And that I wouldn't want anyone to know. And like, I had no idea who she was. So like, I was just like fooling around. Right. And she actually played along. She actually played along with the joke. So didn't take me seriously. So
it's the same thing I did with Mike Rollins. I called him Demotivator Opinions. I said, "Oh, Demotivator Opinions. How's it going?"
Oh, you bitch. Oh, that is not nice. That is not nice. Okay, so I was
How's Australia?
I was faced with this dilemma with Mike Rollins, right? And I never actually met him. He never introduced himself.
He was very pleasant to me, at least.
He was.
But so I walk in and I see him, and he's crouching down, digging through a bag of something. I don't know.
Correct.
And he's wearing this skirt, this long skirt.
Mm-hmm.
And my eyes were drawn as if by electromagnets towards his plumber's crack. Okay, which was there, but also there was the tag of the back of the skirt sticking up.
Was it actually a mattress tag?
It was like a big tag, right, sticking up out of the back of his skirt, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, like this is like the quintessential booger in the nose situation, right? Do I draw his attention to the fact that his tag is sticking out, because that would reveal that I was actually looking in that direction.
Right.
It's not quite like the booger in the nose where it's just obvious because you're looking at somebody's face and you're allowed to look at somebody's face. Okay, right? You're not really supposed to be looking at people's butt cracks. Okay, and so I chickened out, and I did the wrong thing. I will forever feel upset if his tag caused him any embarrassment after I failed to bring it to his attention.
Well, now listen, my friend Michael is non-binary. Okay, so I don't know if him and he or his Michael's preferred pronoun.
As long as he has a beard, I'm gonna go with he. I'm sorry.
Wait,
I'm rolling
are
in that
you
direction myself.
are you serious? Wait, are you serious?
Michael Rollins with it?
Michael Rollins
Oh, God,
is
I'm
non-binary. Is that real?
Michael Rollins is non-binary, as he has explained online to Bering, and told him, yes, I am non-binary. And Bering responded in a very... I'm fine with it as well. Listen, hey, you know what? I had this perception of Michael, of course, based on videos and what you see online, and and I think this is where we have a lot of problems, because we can't deal with people individually. I can disagree with your arguments and still, respect you as a person, and I really kind of gained a little bit of respect for Michael Rowlands, because he was one of the few that actually showed up and, stood there to defend 100%. His position, and they won't all do that. So, I have nothing but respect for him for doing that. Now, whether or not I regard him or her as a he or a she or a what, them... Mike, I love you, but I'm not
transphobe.
But let's nail that one down.
Right. Mike Rowlands, however he chooses to identify, and Chrisiosity were very not only brave, but I don't use that term the way that they use it to refer to
Are they more brave? Are they more brave than Marines though? Are they more brave than a Marine?
They did actually. Because that's the place where they knew they were going to be the minority. They did travel literally across the planet, halfway across the planet.
So you're saying braver than a Navy SEAL, basically, like more brave.
Brian, I don't know if I'd say that, but
it takes a lot of courage. It does. Like when Cassie J's movie came out, we had the premiere in New York. And Michael Kimmel showed up for the Q&A. And he knew he was essentially walking into, enemy territory. Yeah. We all acknowledged it right from the get-go that, we salute you for actually showing up and being willing to come and talk. He was the only feminist who was in that movie who was willing to come and discuss it in a question and answer session. Mm-hmm. So...
yeah, kudos. I wouldn't call it an act of bravery, because I don't think there's any danger in coming.
You're right.
You're the only thing you're in danger of is basically like having your ideas challenged. I don't think there's gonna be any anything outside of that.
I would disagree only in that. Look at what happens to feminists who, for example, speaking of the red pill.
Okay, I think I know what you're getting at.
Question. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
If you even question any of these ideas, even someone like Ranting Feminist, who has just made very, very slight criticisms or questions about some of the things that are raised, you're exiled. Mm-hmm. I do think on some levels, perhaps it is. And in fact, Dr. Carrier, right? He, in fact, probably had a lot more to lose by coming up and debating Straughan, as did Dr. Karen Garst. Garst? Yeah. Garst. Mm-hmm. I thought she was actually very reasonable, and I enjoyed that conversation that you had with her, Karen.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why she was so reasonable is because she was asked several months prior to go on, and she and I sat down and had a conversation over Skype with the organizers, and hashed out our definition of equality, and sort of decided how the panel was, the structural aspects of the panel. And after that, she went and watched a bunch of my stuff and read The Myth of Male Power and did a bunch of research. And I have the feeling that it would have been a very different panel discussion had she come in at the last minute, like Tim Poole did to fill in for Chris Reagan. If she had been filling in for somebody else, if she'd been a feminist filling in for another feminist who had done the research, and she had not herself taken the time to do the research, it would have been a very, very different panel. But I do have to give her credit for actually going and looking at things, watching some of my videos, researching the things that I talk about. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta get in. I got to get in here real quick. I got a couple super chats. But if Lauren, if you're going to say something directly to what Karen said, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. And I wanted to speak about that because that whole panel, I appreciated. I really did enjoy it. Now, there's a part of me, of course, that would have loved the more gladiator match back and forth, like what happened with Carl and Dr. Carrier. However, it wasn't necessary because of the fact. Now, I didn't know that, but she had taken the time to do some research beforehand, which is great. And the only other thing that I want to say is that maybe going forward in the next Mythcons to come, if they take a different approach as to the format of the discussions, because, I think like it finally, I watched last year. I didn't go, but I watched it. And it feels like there just needs to be a bit of progression in the discussion. If the panelists are consistently going back and forth at each other, that's not really a real discussion. I think the moderators could have done a better job of separating the arguments and asking pointed questions of the panelists that would have moved the conversation forward instead of getting stuck in these loopholes of what is the definition of this term and how do you feel about that? And yes, that's more towards, the Straughan Richard Carrier panel, but in terms of the Karen, evil Karen, good Karen panel, it was just more, it just felt like more of a conversation instead of a debate. And that's kind of where, like, I don't know if there needs to be more cohesion going forward in how these discussions happen. But I enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the main issue with the Karen versus Karen thing was that, and the same thing is true with the Straughan and Richard Carrier thing, even though Straughan was very aggressive. The problem is that he was being aggressive to a guy that didn't disagree with him very much. And he was assuming that he was taking on a position, he was actually in the shoes of the opposition that we are so accustomed to seeing. But Richard Carrier was not that guy. He was actually, they were actually...
Richard Carrier has said ridiculous things, and he said ridiculous things there, but those ridiculous things were not addressed. Instead, it was like attacks upon his character, which I found...
well, I mean, Straughan uploaded a video saying he wasn't happy with with how that went either, right? He essentially said, he came out swinging, and essentially was fighting a fart, and the fart wasn't even that smelly. That's my analogy, but that's
perfect.
Sort of
that's exactly what I was thinking.
What he was putting out,
flatulence.
Right? But well, after the Kavanaugh hearings, I'm thinking about boofing a lot. Boofing is going to be
some kind of sexual thing. Are you raping me right now?
No, that's referring to flatulence. We were 16. But essentially, like the reason why because essentially I think Richard Carrier, because Carrier had been ousted by, like, he's kind of been turned on by the social justice community, or abandoned by them or something, right? So I think it would have been a lot like the discussion between me and Karen, if they had actually had here is what our definitions are. If they had a fruitful and productive pre-panel or pre-debate session deciding on their definitions and deciding on what the question is exactly that we're arguing. Because it seemed like they were arguing two completely different questions. And Straughan came out thinking he was going to be Thomas Smith again, and looking to pin his opponent immediately and dominate through the whole thing. But Richard Carrier was not Thomas Smith. As much as I think Richard Carrier has been ridiculous, particularly during the Atheism Plus era, and I think Straughan should have called him on some of that. Like, how can you say that you don't understand this particular concept of social justice when you were part of that group and you were actually saying, you're either with Atheism Plus or you're against us and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So there he could have performed way, way better. I could have performed way better in terms of I had agreed prior that I would not interrupt. And so
you did. a bit.
I did interrupt a couple of times, but I caught myself and you know, and then just didn't continue.
Yeah.
Right. There was no interrupting and then going on the Karen train. Going on there. There was, you know, the odd interjection, you know, when I said, well, okay, she said, well, I would not recommend marrying in your 20s. And I'm like, he was 40 and she was 38. Right.
I think it was a very pleasant back and forth, actually. I think that it was one of the most maybe constructive.
It was very amicable without getting too saccharine, like the trans discussion.
I could have called her on so many things.
Oh, I called her on something after the fact. I'd actually ask you guys for your. I said it on my stream earlier, but I have to point this out. Did you all notice this? That every kind of left-leaning person brought up some sort of issue with abortion.
Yes.
Yeah, because
could it be because Kavanaugh?
Yeah, it's related to the Kavanaugh thing, absolutely. Well, the Roe v. Wade thing is like it's just this fear tool. Like, oh my God, women are good. It's the Handmaid's Tale. It's happening. Yeah. You know. But go ahead, Karen. You're going to say something about that.
Well, okay, I can understand why she brought it up because she sort of got into these issues through that issue. Right. So I can understand her focusing on that. You know, like I kind of wanted to tell her, but I didn't want to turn it into a political thing with Kavanaugh and Trump and all of that. I didn't want to feed into that. Right. Especially given the timing. But the possibility that Roe v. Wade would be overturned by the Supreme Court is extremely, extremely low.
Yes.
It has had how many decades of precedent upholding the basic principles in that initial decision. You know, like allowing for certain regulation on, you know, when you can get an abortion, what you have to do to get one. You know, you have to go 24 hours prior and be given a bunch of information, and then you go back and you have it. Things like that.
So we're not going to treat women like chattel anytime soon?
We're still viewed as chattel.
Is that?
Yeah. Women were still viewed as chattel, right? I wanted to call her out on that patriarchy thing with who got custody, the father, right?
Yeah. I know. Oh my God! And it was very odd to me that she used the same kind of British common law stuff that we talk about as, you know, using as an exemplar, and then brought it back up as if it is relevant in the modern day in a very reversed way of how it actually works. Do you know what I mean? I thought that was odd and maybe intentional. That again, probably she did watch a lot of your content and then thought, oh, I'll read up on British common law and the history of legality of, for example, child rearing. I was a little bit concerned with that. I approached her after the conference or after the debate when we were all outside smoking. I asked her a question. She was very pleasant to me, and I'd ask you the same question, which is I didn't get to ask it. You know, Brian was right there immediately. I was too slow.
It's amazing how fast he is.
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying
because he's Mexican. He's used to running away from ice.
Okay, so I got a couple of super chats now that there's a break at my expense that I want to read through real quick, and then there was something I thought we would look at some of the other stuff because some people.
Aiden wanted to ask me a question.
Oh, it's a very quick question just to you, and it was to the other to excuse me,
Lauren.
Good Karen.
Oh, good Karen.
As well, and I asked her, and she didn't really give me a good answer. But my question was, she brought up the case of Hobby Lobby and the idea of the private citizen being able to deny the right to access to birth control and abortifacients. And my question to her was, do you believe in the right of individuals to be conscientious objectors to things like war? I will not, submit myself for selective service because I am a conscientious objector. She said yes.
Yeah, and there you go. No, I actually agree. I agree with the Hobby Lobby decision. And here's the thing that frustrates me to no end. It's the same thing with her saying, you know, the National Organization for Women opposes forced shared parenting, right? They've opposed every shared parenting bill that's ever been suggested in any state in the United States.
Yes.
And not a single one of those bills would impose forced shared parenting. So what they do is they take a bill that provides a rebuttable presumption of a starting point of shared parenting, which is no different in the sense of it being forced than what we have now, which is the assumption, the rebuttable presumption that the best interests of the child are served by one primary custodial parent and one visiting parent, essentially, right? That's what we have now. We would switch to a rebuttable presumption that children's best interests are served by spending as much time with both parents as possible, right? And that is all these bills are about, is changing that initial presumption. None of it would force anybody to do anything any more than people are being forced to do things now. Mm-hmm. Right. And what the National Organization for Women consistently does is it takes these bills that don't force anything, and presents them in the media as one size fits all mandatory solution to custody. Right. That like you would literally have men who beat and rape their wives and beat and rape their children getting 50% custody because this bill would force that. It would force it on parents who don't want it. It would force it on parents who can't maintain that, right? Like I said, one of them's working up in work camp 3 weeks out of 4, and the other one is at home. No, like it wouldn't force anything. So, I mean, this is really the thing with the Hobby Lobby thing. This is what really frustrated me, is that just because your company insurance doesn't have to provide that doesn't mean you don't have access to it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that you don't have access to a subsidy for those products, right? The government has stepped in and provided those things to those people, right? It's the same thing with
exactly.
With when what's her name, Sandra Fluke, right? At Boston, was it Boston College or Boston University, something like that? It's a Catholic university, right? And they have a conscientious objection to providing birth control of any kind. And she freaked out because how are women going to be able to afford their birth control? And so much of the argument around that and the rhetoric around that was some women need this because they have polycystic ovarian disease.
But I will tell you,
or they have
with endometriosis.
Yeah, or they have endometriosis.
That is covered.
Yeah, it's all you have to do is get your doctor to say, this is for the treatment of a medical condition, and you have your birth control, right? You just don't have it. You just don't have access to it because you want to go out and have sex and not get pregnant, right? Mm-hmm. Because and the reason and the whole thing with the Prozac. Oh, well, they prescribe Prozac is covered by medical insurance. Yeah, because erectile dysfunction is a dysfunction. Mm-hmm. Right? And this is something to treat your body not working properly. What birth control does as a contraceptive, okay, you can get your birth control even at this Catholic university if it's being prescribed to correct a dysfunction in your body, right? You just can't get it to cause a dysfunction in your body because getting pregnant after having sex is the proper functioning of your body.
Right.
Yeah.
And that whole thing with providing Viagra for veterans with PTSD or with other forms of psychological dysfunction after having served in the United States military, as provided through the United States various different forms of medical service. Yeah, again, this is repairing a malfunction, much as with, guess what? Even with Hobby Lobby and all of these other companies, let's be very clear, everybody. If you have polycystic ovarian syndrome or endometriosis and you are being prescribed a form of birth control hormonal treatment, that is still covered because it is a treatment for a hormonal condition, not as a form of birth control. That's how that works. Just as with how a Viagra is prescribed to treat a problem with people who, via the federal government, who have a problem with erectile dysfunction. That's fine.
Yeah. Somebody burp on the stream.
Yeah, that was me. Sorry, guilty.
Okay.
But I also sorry I didn't interrupt, but I also wanted to bring up the other side of the abortion argument, which was touched on in some conversations at Mythcon that weekend. And it's people say, well, all right, well, women don't have access to abortion in every single state. Well, we live in a democracy, okay? So maybe it is that if you live in a state that doesn't provide abortions, maybe those women or those people, those constituents of that state democratically chose that, you know what, this is not something that we agree with, So yes, listen, I'm not really sure where I sit on the pro-life, pro-choice abortion. I agree with liberty. I think anybody should be able to do whatever they want to do as long as it doesn't cost another person taxpayer money. Do whatever you have to do if you can finance it.
Oh yeah, that even goes above the normal NAP. I agree completely.
Lauren, did you just drop?
I think she dropped a little bit.
Lauren, are you still there? Lauren? All right, well, I'm going to seize this opportunity and because I got a bunch of super chats, and I got one from Mythicist Milwaukee. They actually dropped a super chat in here. So Mythicist Milwaukee gave us $10 and says, "Hey guys, thanks for discussing the event. Hope you had a good time. Congrats, Aydin, on the engagement." So now it's public again. I
talked about it a couple times.
This was fine. Okay. That was super cool to hear. Karen, sorry we didn't have enough wine at the Pabst.
Yeah, I'm really freaking annoyed. Okay, I was standing there outside with Bunty King, right, and I was complaining about the fact that not only was my name not on my lanyard, every conference I go to has my name on my lanyard. Mm-hmm. Okay, so like, what the fuck kind of dog and pony show are they running here? Not only that, no wine in the green room. All kinds of complimentary beer and hipster drinks, but no wine. So I was like moaning and whining in my usual bombastic way about that. And then Bunty was like, "But you have a VIP lanyard." And I'm like, "You have a VIP lanyard, Bunty. You're not a very important person."
Oh, that's not very nice.
Oof.
And I was, you know what I'm like.
She's just like that. Nobody's important, Aydin.
Karen, you mostly, I was there. You were hanging out like for like 4 hours with us outside just smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, well, you know. But I would come out, have a cigarette, go back in, come out, have a cigarette, go back in.
I kept looking over, so maybe you weren't there the whole time, but I kept looking over, and every time I looked over, you were there, so...
Yeah, I was there sitting on the concrete curb getting bruises on my buttocks.
Oh, I had that experience.
No, that's impossible, Karen. You have to have buttocks to get bruises on them. And we all know you don't.
Bruises
on the back of your legs.
Bruises on the microscopic flap of skin over my butt bones. How's that?
Yeah,
probably true here as well. Yeah.
Perfect. That's better.
I'm the only one that has ass in this stream. Okay.
Yeah,
enough for everybody.
Baby got back there, Lauren. You got some nice booty.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just I wasn't checking you out much.
I mean, maybe a little, but you know,
a little, yeah.
I mean,
okay.
it kind of commands its own attention.
I walked outside and someone started speaking in Japanese at me, and then I just stayed outside for 3 hours. That's basically what happened to me. And I went, oh my god, I feel as if I walked into a different universe. Yes, I'll talk Japanese to you for 3 hours.
Oh dear.
So the Void that bites gave us 100 rubles, I guess, and says we're not getting any hard data porn today, are we? I think this is in relationship to Aydin. No, we have a study, so don't worry.
I've got studies.
She's got studies. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says, Karen, how is and where is Kevin? So how is Kevin, Karen?
Kevin is in the crate right now because she can't be trusted to not eat Borat while I'm distracted.
Okay.
Well,
Borat
is about 1/3 her size, and he does hold his own. But if I let her out, she's gonna want to play, and then all you'll be hearing is two dogs snorting at each other and a whole lot of thumping. They snort. They don't growl. They as they try and bite each other. So
yeah, we do dog boarding. I hear that a lot. Or you hear these like high pitched like. It just like never ends. It's really annoying.
Yeah,
when like their mouths are open and they're kind of clacking teeth, and then they make these sounds. Oh, it's like nails on a chalkboard.
And then I look over. Then I look over, and Borat's head is in Kevin's mouth, and
they're playing.
Yeah, and it's just like, Kevin, that's not nice.
Okay,
it's not very nice.
Ciara DeFlora gives us $5 and says, is there hard data or studies on the effects of kids being raised non-binary yet?
Not a whole bunch.
No.
We don't even really have good data on. We have some, but not even consistent. We need more, even on people raised, or children raised. And
I think it'd be okay if we don't have enough data ever.
Okay.
But, okay, the Void that bites gives us 200 more rubles and says, I recall reading an article claiming that in people, the chemical response to a conflict of ideas is supposedly the same as it is to physical confrontation.
Yes.
Yes. I had that when I talked to David Jaffe, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and I made a point that was cogent, but he could not. He said, I hear what you're saying, and I know that you're making a lot of sense, and I'm sure that there's a lot of truth there, but I can't help but feel that you might hate women. And I think, I mean, like, it wasn't like that accusatory, but there was an implication. He was like, no, it sounds like you hate women, but what you're saying makes sense. And I'm like, it's just the truth, man. It's not hate. And then Ciara DeFlora gives another $2 and says, men are the new chattel. Women wear chains for fun. So I want to, because I don't want to go for longer than an hour. If it goes a little over, that's okay. But, I want to have some of my weekend. So Lauren is on here, and there's a lot of people that are wondering who you are and stuff. And so
yes.
I wanted to say, so Lauren's been involved in this discussion longer than I have, but she doesn't, like, mostly we talk to her through Skype. She has I would say she's a very interested party, right? I don't want to speak for you though, but one of the things that you guys might know is if you've seen any of the clips going around about Mythcon, you may have seen who was in the chat saw the clip where a woman asks a very pointed question, I'm putting it lightly, towards the woman that was on the black. It was basically about the African-American community conversation that was between some black guy, also known as Derek Blackman, and a woman named Marissa, whose last name I can't remember. I apologize. But she is the Black Lives Matter advocate that ran up on the stage and took the microphone away from Bernie Sanders during I guess you could say, the campaign trail leading up to the 2016 election. So if you've seen that clip, the woman who asked the question was Lauren. She actually was right behind me because I got in front of her because I'm fast to ask the question.
It's because he's used to running away.
No, you're to be surprised when you only have one testicle. There's a lot more movement, so I can get like larger strides.
But his thighs still rub together.
Only slightly more aerodynamic.
It's like that. Oh God, what was it? Some skit where they were doing Mr. T, and he was like, "I pity the fool. If my thighs weren't rubbing together, I'd run over there and beat his shit up right now."
The Mexican jumping bean, Brian.
There
you go.
Shipwrecked Mexican jumping bean to you. So Lauren, what were your thoughts on that panel? Did you get the answer you were hoping for? Do you remember what happened when you asked that question?
No, of course not. And, I didn't expect to get an answer from it. And, that's kind of the other con when it comes to this con is that, you ask questions at a Q&A and there's not really a real thorough exploration of the answers, And now during that panel, I really did appreciate Derek being up there, but I don't really feel that he was as hard hitting as he needed to have been to counter her points because she didn't really have any. And his points were all, I'm central and we as Black people are not a monolith. And, people go through oppression and you have to, we live in a meritocracy. You earn your way up. And she didn't want to combat that. She just wanted to go on and on and on about oppression and how Black people have been victims of racism for so many such and odd years, and I'm so tired of this argument. I really am. This is what I was saying. This is 2018. We do not live in the times of slavery. Your parents were not slaves. Your grandparents were not slaves. If you cannot pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get your life together and figure out how to at least survive on your own and not depend on someone else, then I don't know what to fucking tell you, okay? I am a big believer in Darwinism. It's the survival of the fittest. If you can't fucking make it out here, then maybe you just don't belong here. And I'm sorry, it sounds harsh, it sounds cruel, but it's the absolute fact. And so it just, the whole conversation just really angered me because at that panel, it wasn't a real hard-hitting discussion of the talking points. There was not a real drill down of the issues. So
no, actually, many of them it was like that. Like you will see. The thing is, I was hoping for, and maybe this is just a start of a trend that will go in that direction. It seemed as though, and I missed the Chrisiosity Michael Rowlands one, so I don't know how, because I missed that one because we were eating and we didn't get back till after the Q&A started. But the other ones that I saw, where I was hoping that I would really see the arguments sort of like, fought out by people that were able to bring to the table the best cases for each side. It didn't really happen either because the people ended up being way more agreeable than, we expected, way more amicable. Or the actual goal of the conversation was it wasn't gonna get you a really great discussion. Like, for example, do women have gender equality in the US? The only way you could actually really have that conversation is if the person on the other side from Karen was somebody who genuinely strong, you would need to get fucking Rose McGowan. You'd have to get somebody just way out there, right? You'd have to actually have Michael Kimmel on the stage. You'd have to have somebody who strongly believes in the oppression narrative. And Karen Garst, she was very moderate. She was very reasonable. So you couldn't really have that talk. You weren't really fighting the idea. And Karen Garst's position is just not the mainstream position.
I actually made a point about that. Sorry guys. To go exactly from the point that you just made, Brian, and go into the conversation between Sargon and Richard Carrier, because what we saw from a lot of the more left-leaning people, and I have to say, and I will be very honest here, I think everyone was very friendly and reasonable and cordial and kind at this thing, which is, you know, and I've also said before, I do again appreciate the people who showed up for it. But with Dr. Richard Carrier,
except for the people who phoned in the bomb threat.
Oh, well, let's not. Yeah.
By the way, real quick, and I've said this many times before, interestingly enough, Atheist Conference always in the past criticized Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, never had a bomb threat. Criticized social justice warriors, bomb threat.
Mm-hmm. but there were social justice warriors there, so I'm not exactly. I don't want to place the blame on anyone.
It could be trolls. It could be trolls.
Yeah, upon whom we have no evidence, and I've spoken to some of the coordinators, and I just don't feel comfortable doing that. But Richard Carrier kind of had a very specific thing with this, did he not? Where he cited and stated over and over again that what we see everywhere are but the small vocal minority. That the fact that every single day someone is, I mean, what do we have to look at? The Rolling Stone article of the mattress girl, like how many points do you have to point at? But he's saying all of these people are outliers. That was his point. Did you, if you guys listened to it?
I did. I think he's wrong, but I mean, well, if it is a minority, I'll put it this way. I think he's wrong, but if it is a minority, it's the minority of people that represent the establishment in academia and the media, as well as the entertainment industry. So they are the people that people see the most and they are taught by. And so they may still represent the minority, but they are a very vocal minority with an enormous platform. So they should be fought against nonetheless, if that is true. But I have my doubts.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, it's a matter of degree, right? Like, so you have the rabid ones, and then you have ones that generally agree. You know, like I've been watching the Kavanaugh hearings, yesterday and today, and yesterday when Christine Blasey Ford went and testified. The Republicans, they actually did a really smart thing, and almost all of them deferred their question time. They all had 5 minutes. So there's 22 members, I think, Republican and Democrat on the committee. And they all have 5 minutes to ask a question of each witness. And the Republicans almost all deferred their question period, their time, to a female prosecutor who has a stellar record of prosecuting domestic violence and sexual assault cases. So essentially all of the Republicans' questions were posed by this female prosecutor who is quite, you know, like, I think that she's been portrayed by the left as being cold and, you know, intentionally looking for holes in the story and all of this stuff. But she was equally, dispassionate and looking for holes in Kavanaugh's story as well, right? So she seemed to me like a very impartial party. But the Democrats, while Christine Blasey Ford was testifying, they used their 5 minutes to praise her and all the brave women who have the courage to come forward and report their assaults. All they did was essentially like nibble her cunt lips the whole time. Yeah. And none of them asked a question.
Are you saying Democrats are prone to virtue signaling? That's a crazy idea.
And then when it was time to question Kavanaugh, some of the Republicans deferred to this prosecutor as well, but the Democrats all just like jumped on him and were just absolutely brutal, right? So none of the questions that were posed to Christine Blasey Ford were hostile, brutal, badgering, you know, cutting off your, you know, when you say yes and then you try to contextualize your answer or whatever, right? And she did not cut Christine Blasey Ford off and say, that's the answer. you know, that's all the answer I need. Thank you. Shush. Right. Stop talking. We're going to go to another question. So essentially what you have is this like absolutely freaking, this is half of the fucking committee to approve the next Supreme Court justice. And they are fully buying into Me Too. They are fully buying into Believe the Woman. They're fully buying into I Believe Survivors, right? I would be shocked if there weren't at least half of them that believe Jackie from the UVA Rolling Stones story. You know, like, so it's absolutely fucking hilarious to see somebody saying, oh, this is like a tiny minority. It's not a tiny minority. And regardless, it is a minority, right? It is a minority of people in general, for sure. But the size of the platform they have give everybody the impression that they are the majority. And that's what keeps people from speaking out. When you have only 7 or 8% of people in the UK identifying as feminists and less than a quarter of people in the US identifying as feminists, right? But nobody wants to say that in public because they have the impression given by the media, right, that the feminist position is the popular position. It's the
reasonable position. It's the only position, you know. Yeah, it's either that or you're a terrible person. That's it. That's like, who's the woman who said you're either a feminist or a bigot? And there's no...
Oh, Gloria Allred. Yeah. She's weighed in on this whole Kavanaugh thing.
Oh, God.
Okay, so we're going to...
thing is a nightmare.
Let's talk about Kavanaugh. But before I get into that, let me read the rest of the... Because I got some more super chats I want to read. So Falcon Millennial says, for $5, as a guy that grew up in airplanes, one ball helps with crotch straps, so I've been told. Thanks, dude. The Rub That Bites gives us 40 rubles and says, make Darwinism real again. Troy Davidson gives us $5 and says, not to derail, but any of you guys know ADHD drugs like Concerta, Strattera, Adderall, etc. affect growth in young adults? I was on many curious. And go ahead.
The longitudinal studies are just coming out now.
Yep. Exactly.
And they're all pointing to it actually changes the way your brain develops.
It does.
If you take this stuff as a child.
So unsurprisingly, if we look at how the brain works.
And I'm gonna say something really unpopular in this crowd, right? If I were to recommend to my children, you know, a way of going forward, I would say, you know, okay, dabble a little, maybe a couple of times a year, smoking pot, right? But don't do it habitually. Don't do it regularly until you're in your 20s.
I'm not gonna fight against pot. Me and pot, we have a great relationship.
My only fear is in that when we start to introduce chemical processes into the brain, the neurobiological structure can be fundamentally altered, particularly while it is in such a
growth phase. Yeah.
Yes, degree of growth. So I don't agree with the administration of almost any kind of very strong or significant type of medication or alteration towards the corticosteroid in particular aspect of, because the corticosteroid aspect of the brain, the hippocampus and the hypothalamus, thalamus, and the the whole brain would be influenced by that. I would not recommend that, even as a person very tertiarily related to this, just knowing that it's probably going to have a long-term impact.
I would essentially just say that anything that's going to mess with your brain,
don't do it.
You know, anything that temporarily messes with your brain, changes the way your brain works. If you take it during a developmental stage of life, then it can actually have permanent consequences. So, and a friend of mine is on antidepressants for the rest of her life, essentially because she abused methamphetamine when she was in her mid-teens, and it permanently altered how her brain developed, and now she essentially can't get out of bed in the morning without taking Prozac. So,
I mean, I have to take lithium and antidepressants every day, but I just don't give that stuff to children while their brains are developing. Please don't do that. I just be very suspect.
Also, lithium is a great song by Nirvana. Okay,
it's a good song by Nirvana.
Yeah.
It is.
It is.
Troy, okay,
So
that was
is
Troy
Rape
Davidson
Me.
for $5.
That means it's a good thing, obviously.
French, we're going to get to that. French Honey Badger gives us $5. This is from Encapistan, says, you never need a majority to move a population. Generally, you only need 10% of vocal people to move the rest of the rabble in a specific direction. Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether or not they're the radicals, the fringe radicals. They're the ones that we see everywhere. Like the woman, real quick, I'm just going to throw this out there before I read this last super chat. The woman, Queer Kid Stuff, her channel is tiny, right? It's actually really small, but a lot of people respond to it. But one of the things that I've never responded to her because I don't care about the content that much. But one of the things I learned is, despite the fact that her channel is so small and not very popular, the mainstream is like, they're going to give her a show or something like PBS and like NPR are like looking into her, you know, to use her content to educate kids in school. So this is like, this is an example of like, you could be a small, unpopular YouTube channel or whatever, but still have a great deal of influence if the, you know, the 10%, I guess, in the media, which I think maybe compared to the population is small, if they decide to use you as a tool. So
yeah.
Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, after reading Christy Winter's tweets discussing Kavanaugh's case, just almost makes me want to bite the barrel of a gun. And then he has a little middle finger emoji, Christy. I don't know what she said, but one thing, I will make some final thoughts on Mythcon, and then we'll talk about Kavanaugh for about 20 minutes. So I think that we, you know, I guess all in all, if it's safe to say, it was a good time. But I think that next time, Mythicist Milwaukee, try to get the best people to pose the arguments for any discussions you want to have, not based on their popularity, but rather their ability to make really good arguments, if you can get them. I know that it's not necessarily easy to do, but if you're going to have a discussion about, you know, feminism, try to get the people who stand to best represent both sides of the argument, for example. Whatever it is you're going to talk about, you know.
Hey!
I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying, like, it should have been you versus, like, whatever the most robust feminist they could get on was. You know, that was, and maybe Karen Garst was the best they could do.
Robust feminist argument. I think it probably was, actually.
No, because
I think she actually did present the most robust feminist argument.
I don't think she did, because she wasn't Christy Winters for one, and nobody's more robust than her. But also, Karen Garst actually
Wait, are we
believed.
Talking about as a farce or as realistic?
No, realistically speaking, like, if you're gonna actually look at the feminist side, I don't think that Karen Garst is representative of feminists. I don't.
That's the point. There are no robust feminist arguments. So yes,
well, Dr. Carrier is also the only person who will defend social justice, and the reasonable, rational people you will never get in. Even though you got Michael Rowlands and Christiosity.
Yeah. I know, and don't forget Vadim. Don't forget Creationist Cat.
And Vadim was there, yeah.
Yeah, but like, nonetheless, what I'm saying is that, you know, if you're going to pick your topics, be very specific on what you want to talk about. Yeah, they're fine, whatever. But if you're going to get people, you know, make sure that the actual goal of the discussion is very specific and make it interesting, and also get, you know, the best guest for it, not necessarily the most popular people. Like that. Just like get the best people, you know, if you can. I get that it's not easy. So Brett Kavanaugh. So this is relevant because one of the things that I thought was really interesting, it was in the Karen Garst discussion. She was talking about the Brett Kavanaugh case, and she was basically worried that if he got into office, you know, like all these terrible things were going to happen, like women are going to lose their rights and everything.
Oh, women, it'll become Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, the Handmaid's Tale. Well, she didn't say that, but that's sort of like the narrative. You know, Handmaid's Tale is going to be real, but the thing is, and I'm watching this, right? And this, if there is anything that could potentially red pill the normies, it would be seeing this unfold and them asking themselves, how is it that there is a woman that can just make claims, and not only do people even consider that what she's saying should be taken seriously, but she gets to speak in front of the Senate, and on top of that, like, it just becomes, like, I think it's passed with, like, a vote of 10 to 11. It was that close, even though there was no evidence. And everything was based on what? Oh, the optics don't look so good or whatever.
Brian,
Go ahead.
There was evidence. He kept a diary. He was like super
he had the calendars.
artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. He kept calendars. And there was also evidence in the form of she said, this person and this person and this person will corroborate my story. And then they were like, yeah, no, we don't actually remember anything like that. One of them said, I don't remember that happening, but I believe her. But I never saw it, but I believe her. But that's her friend.
Karen, did you hear Senator Whitehouse today? Not only.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
I refresh my memory because I can't keep track of all.
Go ahead, Aydin.
Oh, imagine the stupidest one. So the Senator Whitehouse is not only the one who now 2 days in a row has brought up fart jokes, drinking games, has said that if you drank a beer, you're a rapist, essentially. He more or less implied that. But then today he brought out again Brett Kavanaugh's diary from when he was 16 or 17 years old and is like, look, it says here, you said, we drank some skis. Well, that must mean you're a rapist.
Skis.
Yeah, right.
This is the level that we're at. It's absolute insanity.
What's really frustrating for me, right? Because, there are people who have essentially said, oh, yeah, Brett Kavanaugh occasionally got so drunk that he puked, right? And
when he was 16?
In college, right?
Right.
And Brett Kavanaugh is like, I have a weak stomach. Okay, well, I have a weak stomach. My guy has a very, very robust stomach. Okay, and he asked me to marry him 6 times when he was blind drunk, never threw up, right? And had no memory of it in the morning. And I would be like, you asked me to marry you again last night. And he's like, And that was the end of it, right? Because it's like, okay, so eventually I told him that because he would always follow it up with, I would always follow the proposal up with, I think we should talk about this in the morning. Because I knew he wouldn't remember. Okay, and then he'd be like, "You just don't want to commit to me," blah blah blah, right? And then he'd lay a load of guilt on me, like a Jewish mother-in-law, and then I finally said, "Okay, well, if you ever do that again, I'm going to record you and I'm going to hold you to it." And then he didn't ask me again for 3 years, and then then he finally asked me while he was sober. But okay, so this is a guy who I have seen him throw up once in the 8 years that I've been with him. And it wasn't because he was drunk. And he has had blackouts. Me, I almost never vomit, but I also never black out. I have been so drunk that I have vomited. I have been so drunk that I've been staggering. I've been so drunk that I was still drunk the next morning when I took the fucking podium.
Well, I'll be completely honest. I tossed my cookies at Mythcon because I decided to take a shot of really shitty vodka, and I went, nope, I have to go to the bathroom immediately.
Oh, yeah.
But I wasn't even drunk.
I've never had a gap in memory. I have never ever even the one time I was 14 and got so drunk that I puked and puked and puked and puked and my sister had to come and rescue me. Even then, I have no gaps in my memory. I remember every freaking agonizing, horrific freaking moment of throwing up on my friend's bedroom floor. Her name was Ravina, and she was a sweetie.
Oh, I know. I have these feels. I understand.
So I'm sorry, guys. I wasn't able to see Christy Winter's tweet because she's blocked me. So if you guys could tell me what shit it is she tweeted about the Kavanaugh thing.
Incognito window.
Oh yeah, I'm like on a block list of some kind because there's a bunch of people who don't even I've never spoken to me, but I can't look at their tweets. I can't find them on Twitter.
I believe Christy Winters would have put you on her block list.
It's crazy.
I was expecting to see her at Mythcon. I'm surprised she didn't show up.
I'm on Andy Worski's block list. Okay, so like,
well, get on Karen's
I'm
level.
not on anybody's. I think I described that I'm in that weird place where I try to be everybody's friend, which puts me in a strange position.
Yeah.
hey, Richard Carrier blocked me. Being, remember he said that we don't get conservatives getting blocked and deplatformed is not a thing.
Oh, that's wrong.
But, yeah, but I can't see his tweet.
That's
real interesting.
Elements activated. So
never talk to you, Richard.
So anyway, guys, hit the like button too, please. If you haven't smashed the like button, please do so now. So what
mash that like button.
Yes, please smash the like button. I got a couple of
drag your testicles back
articles
and forth across the like button.
I got a couple articles. There was one thing about this Brett Kavanaugh thing that actually like really pissed me off. Okay, so one of the things that I saw going around is that a lot of media sites, whether they're like large mainstream ones like MSNBC or CNN, or fringe fucking SJW like extreme ones like Vox. Not that there's a big difference between the two, but they have all made this case that because Brett Kavanaugh's speech, like the way that he responded, was emotional, and Ford's was not, that somehow he is more guilty. And the funny thing about that, the reason why I thought about this, and it makes me mad, is they're saying that he's getting emotional, and this must mean that he's guilty, that he is lying, that he's hiding something. And the thing that blows me away is, aren't these the same places that tell men that they have to, like, be more emotional, like they should express their feelings more often, because otherwise it's,
Yeah, and I have a real fucking problem with this, okay? Because how is it that you are, out of one side of your face, you're going to say that men need to be more emotional and express your emotions, and then at the same time, you're going to fucking shame this man who is showing his emotions after being accused of being a gang rapist without... It fucking pisses me off.
And let's talk about Dr. Ford's emotions. How about we talk about her emotions? Yeah. Of which she expressed zero.
None.
She did nothing but vocal fry. She couldn't shed a single tear while she was describing what supposedly was one of the most traumatic events of her life. The only time she even came close to crying I watched this intently. The only time that she came even close to crying was when talking about how she had been attacked because she had brought forth the allegations, which is like, of course, you were attacked for bringing forth allegations because you brought forth very serious allegations. Dr. Ford showed no indication of any kind of remorse, of fear, sadness, anything.
No.
Nothing.
And the thing about it, if Kavanaugh had sat there and been completely emotionless, they would have used that against him.
They would have called him a robot who raped him.
Exactly. It would have been an absolute
he's a
sign of
soulless sociopathic bastard who probably would rape women and not even
Exactly. Yeah.
He put his cigarette out in their vagina.
Yeah, he shows himself as he is, which I believe he did. And I, as someone who has studied human communication and body language, although not extensively, but to a point, I can say fairly. I will say, with the extent of my master's degree on the line, Judge Kavanaugh showed a much more honest degree of body language than did Dr. Ford.
Oh, even when he said that the allegations by Swetnick were what did he call them? That garbage or something like that. And then she asked, do you want to speak more to that? And he's like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't.
Nothing else to say.
Ooh. Uh-oh. One sec. We're getting some... Hang on.
Robotic. Okay. Even, like, these are allegations that are, that he was drugging and gang raping women at, and like, I was on a podcast, and it's not the most organized or reputable podcast out there, but the other night I went on, and it's just kind of a chaotic nightmare, this podcast. But I was like, Sweatnick's allegation, right? You have to ask her, after you were gang raped, why'd you keep going back to the fucking same parties? Why'd you keep accepting the invitation?
Oh my god, it's because like I liked being gang raped until they told me no. But the Sputnik, like her allegations too. Like, have you looked into her association both with Dr. Ford and with creepy porn lawyer?
Oh god, yeah, and it's
just unbelievable. This is all coordinated. It's obvious. And
well, like even if Blasey Ford's accusation is based on reality, okay, and I'm not saying it is, but even if it is, right, these other two allegations coming on the heels of it have to make people actually pause, because not necessarily Ramirez's, but Sweatnick's allegation of the gang rape parties, right? Where she attended 10 of these parties, right? Even after she was gang raped at one, and watched these guys line up at a bedroom door to gang rape women. And like, that's shades of Jackie, right? That's the name that will go down in history. I've been Jackied.
Mm-hmm.
Like the anybody who has any degree of experience in dealing with false allegations would be able to tell you that when somebody's making a false allegation, one of the ways to tell that they're making a false allegation is it is absolutely outlandish. It is extreme. It's absolutely brutal, right? They, the Jackie accusation, with the glass coffee table and being raped on a pile of broken glass. Like, there is some man in the world who would bounce his testicles up and down on a pile of broken glass when there are 7 other people in the room who can help him move his victim to somewhere other than a pile of broken glass. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right? Even if you look at it like, okay, so there's all these men who, we're going to take her word for it, there's all these men who were standing around watching her get raped on a pile of broken glass. What man would be willing to put his palms and his knees down on a pile of broken glass and bounce his fucking junk against it?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have to look at the data that, for example, I've started to provide here, and I sent some to Brian, but the reality is that there is a wealth of data that indicate how someone... I don't blame Dr. Ford, okay? Here's why. There's data that indicate actually that when you see someone on television, you're more likely to perceive them as being... It's called transference. You see them a whole bunch on television, and then you're said, who raped you? Now, you've already been implanted with an idea of rape through either something that actually happened to you or through a therapist and influence. But when you see that person, particularly on television, the most important aspect is the media connection. That actually, from the data that I have, the most important aspect is seeing something through the media. That indicates that, and we've actually found this through multiple pieces of research. When you see someone's face on TV, you're more likely to point them out in a lineup, even if they had nothing to do with anything that happened to you, only because you recognize their face.
Yeah. So, no, and like I tweeted, I liked a video and it tweeted out just yesterday. I forget what her name is, but she's a memory expert. particularly spent 25 years researching the ability to implant false memories in people.
Oh, really? Oh, I'd love to talk to her if you.
Yeah, no. Just search my Twitter feed and it'll be there. But essentially, she said that you can convince your kids at age 16 to like asparagus by essentially implanting a memory that they really liked asparagus as children, as small children.
We've seen this over and over again.
You can, and when you recall an incident, you're not just recalling it, you're editing it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So, she said that when they showed people the same scene of a car crash and asked how fast the cars were going, when they asked how fast were the cars going when they hit each other, versus how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, they estimated different speeds.
Exactly.
A higher speed based on smashed into. So, like you're looking at, and if you implied that, somebody ran a stop sign, if they're watching somebody run a stop sign, but if you just change the wording of the question, they'll remember that stop sign as a yield sign.
Exactly. Brian, if I see you have it pulled up, would you mind if I read a section from the chapter that I sent you?
Not at all. Where do you want me to go? Do you have a page in mind?
The first page is fine. It's just from the case. It's just the case study.
All right, that's fine.
There was a speaker named Benjamin Wilkomirski, together with the Israeli psychotherapist Alistair Bernstein. He spoke about the problems of identification of children surviving the Holocaust. They presented a new form of psychotherapy that they claimed was able to bring back lost memories. It was said that this therapy could reconstruct early childhood memories even decades later, which is essentially what we're talking about here, correct? Mm-hmm. According to Wilkomirski and Bernstein, the soul keeps an exact picture of traumatic experiences. The thesis of Wilkomirski and Bernstein received great interest and positive feedback by audiences. In the evening, a ceremonial act was... I'm going to go through a little bit of this, so I'm going to skip a little bit. Anyway, it was said that Wilkomirski, the child in this case, was born in Riga, Latvia, into a Jewish family, was the only one of his family surviving the Holocaust, and was given to insensitive Swiss adoptive parents after the war. In search of his own past, Wilkomirski traveled to places of his prosecution, discovered his parents' house in Riga, and found the barrack in which he lived in the concentration camp in Majdanek, Poland. This is Wilkomirski in 1995. The rediscovery of his memory was possible in the course of intensive psychotherapy. After the sessions with his psychotherapist, he used to write down what he wrote it all down, whatever. This book sold massive amounts of copies across 12 different languages and was seen as a classic piece of Holocaust literature. Temporarily, it is the best-selling book in Switzerland. Even as of the purpose of the chapter I am citing, even the well-known author Alfred Jendek, among others, whatever. It's the best-selling book in Swedish. This book of this man who recalled his memories of being a Holocaust denier because he made an amazing effort to reveal his past, his identity, and his search leads to a presentation that, almost like no other, documents and communicates insights into the complex tragedy of the Holocaust. However, 1 year after this book was published, it became evident that Wilkomirski had fully invented his childhood memories. Not a single word of it was true. See Blake 2002. He was neither born in Riga, nor was he the child of Jewish parents. He was born in 1941 in Biel, Switzerland, under the name Bruno Grosjean, as a child of Swiss seasonal workers, who gave him to a children's home and later put him up for adoption under the name Bruno Dosecker. He had never been in a concentration camp, nor had ever at any time been outside of Switzerland. Similarly, the person who had recognized him as a coin mate from the concentration camp had herself never left Great Britain during the war. This entire book that ravaged and revolutionized multiple nations was all based on false memories. This is the point I'm talking about.
There you go. I mean, just okay. So investigate the Satanic Panic in the United States in the 1980s.
Oh, absolutely. What was oh shoot, I was trying to remember it earlier today.
Satanic ritual, child sexual abuse in daycare centers.
Exactly.
Right? And some of these kids, and like, here's the thing, right? There were prosecutions based on accusations. Part of the accusations occasionally that led to prosecutions occasionally involved things like, my daycare provider was flying around the room on a broomstick, or my daycare provider sacrificed a newborn baby and melted its body down to make candles, or my daycare provider tied me to a tree in the front yard of the daycare center in broad daylight and raped me anally with a kitchen knife. Okay. While people were walking by and did nothing.
And it turned out all of it was false. Every single word of it was false.
No evidence. No evidence of any anal penetration, let alone with a fucking kitchen knife. Right? And yet there were like over 100 people prosecuted over this. Right? And the mantra during that period of time was, children don't lie. Well, does that remind you? Does that remind you of any hashtags you've heard?
Karen, I'm sure you've read the book "Believe the Children," which is based on the Satanic Panic you're talking about.
Yeah,
I believe the children.
I haven't read the book.
Oh, read it.
I watched all of this unfold on the news when I was in my teens.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Believe the women, like Patton Oswalt.
What's going on? Right.
Just
and
believe them.
I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I was thinking, isn't anybody going to actually come out and say, like, is this,
show me the evidence?
Is this stuff really credible? Like broomsticks flying, tunnels under the daycare leading to ritual sacrifice chambers that, 20 bulldozers can't find, 20 backhoes. What the fuck is going on? Right? The Pizzagate thing was the same thing with me. Like, I'm like, really, Pizzagate? Like,
well, it's who's in control of the narrative,
Yeah.
Like when somebody brought up, oh, these people, they actually make
Alison.
When these Democrats, they're Podesta confessed to making a sacrifice to Moloch, right? And I read the email, and it was a joke.
Of course.
It was a joke. I hope I do well. I've sacrificed a chicken to Moloch, right? Fingers crossed.
I gotta read some super chats, but I also have to show you something. Alison sent me something, and she is like dead set on making sure we watch it. It is related to the Kavanaugh case.
Oh my god!
It's 50.
Ask her if she did she send a super chat?
No, she didn't send a super chat, but
damn it, Alison.
But that's good, Lauren. But let me play it. It's 55 seconds. It's called "What the Hell? If a Woman Says It, That's Evidence." That's probably it's a quote from this. So listen to this bit, and then I'll read out the super chats. Or then we'll respond to it. Then I'll read out the super chats, and that'll be it, because I got like 4 minutes to the hour, and I don't want to go over an hour and a half. It's okay. It's okay.
I have to cook dinner too. So.
Yeah. So check it out.
Some sort of political.
Can you guys hear? Can you guys hear this?
Some sort of political gamesmanship is.
Can you guys hear that when I play it?
Okay. Yes. I can hear it. Turn it up a little though.
I have it turned up all the way, so just listen closely.
Okay. Everybody, shut up.
Shut up. Okay.
Some sort of political gamesmanship is disrespectful and a disservice to the process.
Not to mention the fact that he knows better. If a woman goes into a courtroom, any courtroom in the United States of America, and says, that man attacked me, that's enough. That's evidence. When the woman says it, it's evidence. Moreover, when it turns out that she's been telling people for 10 years or 8 years or whatever the number is, each of those prior consistent statements is also evidence. So this whole bananas about, oh, it's a he said, she said, is wrong. It is not a he said, she said. It is according to the law, it is a corroborated statement, and if a jury believed her, they could convict him. And Lindsey Graham knows better because he's tried a lot of cases.
He's trying to say that this is a big Democratic con, much in the same way the president is trying to do as well.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so it's corroborated by herself.
Yeah.
Okay, if what that woman said is actually accurate under the law, right? Rape law has gone way too far. Yeah. Right? If that is actually accurate, what she said, actually accurate under the law, then we have pushed it too far in favor of accusers, and it needs to be pulled back. Because that's absolutely retarded. The fact that she told, this person, that person, the other person, that does not make it any more. That's not corroboration. I corroborated myself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, yes, you can say that a story that a person tells is more credible if they are consistent with it. And by consistent, I don't mean tell it in the exact same words every single time, but be consistent with your details, right? You can essentially assume that maybe that's more credible. Maybe that there's more to it, right? Like maybe it's something that we should put more weight on than somebody who's grossly inconsistent in their testimony. But to say that one can corroborate oneself and that's recognized as corroboration under the law, that just tells me the law has gone completely fucking haywire.
Yeah, that was MSNBC. So just so you guys know where that's coming from.
Of course it was MSNBC. Jesus, Brian. Certainly wasn't Fox News.
So, certainly wasn't. I heard that Fox News actually did support Kavanaugh for being honest in his emotional, I guess because he was being emotional, they thought that it made, what he was saying seem more credible.
I want to say that there were a couple of times when Kavanaugh was testifying, when he was giving his opening statements, that I actually got choked up.
Yeah.
Yeah?
When he talked about his daughter, his 10-year-old daughter, telling her older sister when they were kneeling for prayer before bed, telling her older sister, we should pray for the woman. Mm-hmm. And he had to pause because he was having difficulty. I mean, it was the same thing when I'm very like that, right? Okay, so when Jon Ronson, his TED Talk on he wrote the book So You've Been Publicly Shamed. And he was talking about people who were whose lives have been destroyed by the Twitter mob, essentially the social media mob. And he talked about somebody who who was publicly shamed over just a minor incident that was probably misinterpreted by the person who publicized it and sent the mob at him. And he put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger, and he was having a really hard time finishing his talk when discussing that, and I was just all choked up too. So I mean,
I didn't see that part, but I did hear the bit about his daughter and what she said, and I thought that was pretty cool.
But Kavanaugh had a hard time. He had a hard time even talking about that.
I know. I saw that too.
Hard time talking about a lot of this stuff. He had what I would call sincere anger and sincere grief and despair. and then an admiration for his daughters and his wife, and not just their support of him and what they have to suffer, but also that his younger daughter would include Christine Blasey Ford in her prayers.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the whole thing, like the fact that, he was angry, and that means that the entire thing is we can just write it off as a man who would rape women. That's
right.
absolutely absurd.
As if he has no right to be angry.
I know. It's, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg has called this entire thing a partisan show on both sides.
Huh. Wow.
And she said that, when I was confirmed 94 to 96 to 3. 96 votes in favor, 3 against. And she was just like, that was the back then. We're doing something different now, and it's not right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I got a couple super chats here, and then like some final thoughts on this. The Void That Bites gives us 100 rubles and says, throwing up from a shot of vodka disqualifies you from being a proper Slava boo. That's for you, Aydin.
Yeah, and you're not a shit poster either. You can't hold your liquor.
So you've lost it, boo. John Woodruff gives us 20 bucks. Thank you, John, and says, here's the question I would ask Karen. I'm pro-choice, but will vote for pro-life candidates every time until men have the same right to financial abortion. How about you? Triple question mark. So very pressing question because of all the question marks.
Well, it doesn't really matter with me because I'm, number one, I rarely vote. Number two, I am only pro-choice while holding my nose. I detest everything about abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that if we could get to a point where there was not a single abortion performed ever, under any circumstances, that would be great.
Yeah.
I hate everything about it, and I hold my nose and support women's right to choose, essentially based on what I would consider emergency circumstances. And emergency circumstances, not just physical emergency, but sort of the emergency that can sometimes occur when, let's say just not, sorry, pardon me, not just physical, but emotional and all of those things, that okay, I can sort of support it within very, very confined parameters. I would like it to be well within the first trimester. I would actually like it to be well within the first 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that's it, right? And don't bitch to me about transvaginal ultrasounds, because a pap smear is more invasive than that.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. CR de Flora gives us $2 and says, I smell woo in that case study, lots of it. That is related to the one that Aydin brought up. Maybe Aydin and I, would you be okay with talking about this stuff in more detail next Friday? Aydin? The whole false memories thing in relation to
absolutely.
rape accusations?
I'll have a video out that out before then, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We'll have lots to talk about, so.
All right,
yeah.
Excellent. And Field of Bears gives us $2 and says, a wild Alison appears. Leggett, I choose you. Because Alison's in the chat haranguing me. Hokey Bukisa gives us $4.99 and says, we should require at least 2 women. I mean, come on, guys. Come on. It's the current year. And if a woman's testimony is going to be enough, then maybe we need more women to qualify. So that way you know, that's how we're going to treat it, right? So I wonder if that's how they do it in Islam. I wonder if the reason why it takes more women to testify is because they just take it as gospel. Could be the reason.
Well, I would say that probably the reason for that is that women are more sympathetic on the stand, and there's a compensation built into the law for that. Although I will say that a woman's testimony counts more than a man's in certain legal matters. So in matters of proper child care and things like that, women's testimony counts more than men's.
Yeah.
So it's not as cut and dried as people present it, that, you know, a woman's testimony is worth half a man's in every single situation. That's not the case. Well,
not to like dredge anything up, but that actually came up on the last day of Mythcon. So we're back on Mythcon for a second. You had left for the plane with Lauren, and I was like hanging out with Lindsay. We were like chatting with people, and that woman who was the moderator, she said that one of the things that we were talking about the debate between the two Karens, and she said one of the things that she strongly disagreed with you on had to do with Islam, and she said something that she claimed that you said something that I know you would never have said. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I defended you on it. And then I said, and then she brought up the whole, like, you know, a woman's testimony is worth only half, and therefore women over there are oppressed or whatever. And I said that's what it was. She said that you claim that women in the Middle East don't need help at all, and I said no. There's no way Karen said that. She said they don't need feminism. That's very different. If you bring feminism to the Middle East, you're going to make it worse, you know. And that was what I said, and I made the case for it. But the whole testimony thing came up, and I said, but what is a woman's testimony worth compared to a man? Like as it stands, like it's probably more involved than that, because what you're being told is the sort of conservative talking point, which is, you know, this is how badly they treat their women over there, and they're wrong on that. And so, you know, I'm just bringing it up to throw it out there.
Muslims say the same thing about us. Look
yeah,
at how poorly
of course
we treat
they
our
do.
women over here.
Yeah,
right. So
course.
it's like, yeah, we sexually degrade our women. We make them wear skimpy clothes. We make them put their bodies on display. We make them perform degrading sexual acts. We indulge in pornography, which is disgusting and demeaning to women. All of these things, right? They say all of the same things. It's like that quintessential cartoon. You all know it, right? The woman in the bikini and sunglasses, and the woman in the burqa walking past each other and looking at each other, and one says, everything but her eyes covered. What a horrible patriarchal society. And the other one says, oh, nothing but her eyes covered. What a horrible patriarchal society.
Okay, so the next super chat is the Void that Bites. He gives us 100 rubles. He's been very generous. Thank you, man. And says, the accusation being payback for Kavanaugh turning down her advances 35 years ago seems very plausible after having seen how some women handle rejection. So thank you for all those super chats. Don't give us any more, because I'm trying to like get out of here. But let me get one other thing from you guys. If you all watched the Kavanaugh hearings, what is your favorite highlight? And I'm going to start with Lauren Brooks, because she's been super nice and quiet, and I'm going to put her on the spot. So,
my favorite highlight from that entire thing, and
good
now,
or bad,
granted,
good or bad, like
good,
whether it piss you off or not. Okay, go ahead.
Very, very good, very good. I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but I do want to rewatch it. My favorite part of everything that I've seen so far is Lindsey motherfucking Grambo. Holy shit. Lindsey Graham just came out. Yes, Grambo. He came out and he just he sucker punched every single body. And nobody expected that from Lindsey Graham, because he's been just, you know, the poster boy for the left for the longest time. Nobody ever thought that he had it in him. And he came out and he absolutely nailed it. He drove it absolutely home. Kavanaugh should be confirmed. I am 100% in his corner. This whole thing is a sham. I really would like to see Kavanaugh confirmed. The sooner the better. Cory Booker, fuck that little crying, whiny pussy. Holy shit. But I won't go on. That's what I have to say for it. Lindsey Graham for me took the cake so far of what I've seen, and yes, confirmed Kavanaugh. Yes, there we
go. Is it my turn or is it Aiden's turn?
I don't know.
Aiden,
I
lost the Doge.
No, I pressed the wrong button. You guys can
always
hear
trying
me.
to not interrupt anybody, but yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And
what was your highlight? Highlight,
Aiden, favorite part.
Highlight of the Kavanaugh hearing specifically.
Yeah.
Geez, I don't know. Oh, it has to be Lindsey Graham. It has to be. Yeah. I mean, I know everyone else is going to say it, but Lindsey Graham grew a set of balls for the first time. And he's still a neocon piece of shit who I can't stand, but he grew a set of balls for about 5 minutes, and he didn't necessarily do it again today when he had the option to again, but Lindsey Graham has done what I wanted him to do, which is grow a set. Thank you. That's all I want.
That was good. People are calling him Golden Grams in the chat.
There you go.
I like Grambo though. I'm kind of loving Grambo. Okay, Karen. Okay, your turn.
For me, the low light was Cory Booker, who incidentally admitted to groping a classmate, a female classmate, when he was 15. So his
what a interesting time. He decided to talk for 20 minutes.
It's so and the guy couldn't even put a coherent sentence together.
No.
It was just pathetic. My highlight was not all of the impassioned sort of editorializing by some of the Republicans during Kavanaugh's testimony, like Lindsey Graham, although I appreciate all of that. It was Ted Cruz's statement today.
Yeah, I was at the Ted Cruz statements. Yes,
level-headed, very based on the law, based on jurisprudence, based on due process, based on evidence.
The Zodiac Killer was based.
So level-headed, so reasonable, so calm, and I was just like, how could anybody take issue with anything he said? He didn't come out, swinging, claiming a democratic, conspiracy or some kind of political agenda or whatever. He allowed that. He allowed that Christine Blasey Ford could be telling the truth, or the truth as she understands it or knows it or remembers it. But you have to follow the evidence. The evidence does not show. The evidence does not corroborate her story, right? And so call me a radical centrist. I really liked his remarks on that because they were so moderate and so sensible. And I remind myself of this classmate of my older boys who told me that she had a crush on him because everything he says just sounds so reasonable.
Well, girls, they have a thing for serial killers. The women, they're attracted to those kinds of guys.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my God, you couldn't do better than him, and I have my bones to pick with Ted Cruz over the draft and all of that stuff, right? But I have to admire a lawyer who's
Kevin.
Who's really good at lawyering. Oh, Kevin, shut up. Who's really good at lawyering and also seems to be consistent and honorable.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to bring it back to Mythcon because you guys made some interesting points. we were talking about what we'd like to see, and I think what I'm getting at, because my favorite part was actually, although I really liked the Lindsey Graham bit, because it was like nice to see somebody come out swinging and say what was like on the top of my mind. But my favorite part was also the Ted Cruz part too, and it was because he was just, like Karen said, just brought the evidence. He basically made the argument. He was very cool, and he was on cruise control. He just put it out there, right? And so the thing that I want to say about Mythcon is what I would like to see is more Ted Cruz, less Lindsey Graham. So people that are like bringing the arguments and they're really interested in getting down to the fucking nitty gritty and getting to it, and they're prepared. I want to see that. Now I know that that's a lot to ask for, but I think it should be something to shoot for. So that's what I'd like to see. And yes, that was good to see as well. So anyway, let me see if there's I got another super chat, but go ahead. Somebody wanted to say something.
Yeah, see now, and this is the thing, I feel bad that Carl felt bad about his performance, and I understand why. But honestly, I paid to come and see a show, and that's what I got. Now, I didn't. Every panel wasn't as entertaining for me. I thought that the panel between Karen and Karen Gerst was going to be a little bit more, combative. But I came to see people make hard hits with relevant points. And although I understand where Carl is coming from in his, the unhappiness or uneasiness with that exchange, I felt it was amazing. I was in the crowd clapping every 10 seconds. Like, every point that was made was just like, yes.
No, those are great points. Unfortunately, they were directed at the wrong person.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Yeah. No, and it was, and I totally agree. I totally agree. But again, I came to see those points being made, and yes, it was an unfortunate opponent. Richard just was not prepared for this fight, and
he didn't want that fight. He wasn't even the guy. So no,
he wasn't.
No.
But again, I paid good money to see a good battle on stage, and I'm very satisfied with what I got. So
there you go. I mean, I came to see you yell at that Black Lives Matter lady, and I got that. That was when Karen gave me tickets. I was like, okay, as long as Lauren yells at a black woman, I'm going. So
hang on. There you go. Let's see what happens next year.
Maybe you'll be up on if you're up on the stage and you're across from the same woman, Rumble in the Jungle. I'm buying tickets for that one. So.
Look, that's my goal.
Okay. Well, I love that you guys came on for the show, and I hope that you guys had fun. But I really want to get on with my regular life now.
So, I know. I have to go to. I have a dog in the crate whining her head off, and I got dinner to cook. And
thank you for having me on as always.
Aydin.
Aydin, it's great talking to you.
You are the bomb. So. Okay, so I love you guys. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Thanks for coming on the stream today. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you hit the like button again. And also leave us a comment. What was the highlight of the Kavanaugh hearings for you? And what was a low light? I want to see how many votes for Graham, how many votes for Cruz, how many votes for Booker. Who knows? Maybe some people liked his arguments.
Also, please, somebody. Photoshop Dianne Feinstein's face on that good.
Yeah, on Palpatine's body. Yeah.
It won't look any different, but it make me happy.
Yeah, Dianne Feinstein's face on Emperor Palpatine's body, and tweet it at Honey Badger Radio if you can, or any other memes that come out of it. Make sure you got your calendars, because you got to have your calendars in order. And lastly, if you drink beer ever and you're a male, you're probably a rapist. Okay, so we're gonna get out of here now. Yeah, probably. And